Hey everybody, kia ora. Sorry it's been so long since I've made any videos, a couple of weeks at least. Actually longer than that, because the last video I uploaded was a re-upload of an old video. Anyway, this is just a very simple, soft-spoken ASMR ramble on, I guess, what's been happening the last wee while in the news. And you'll guess from the title of the video that I'm going to talk about the Queen, the monarchy, and stuff like that. So I think I just wanted to kind of get my thoughts organised, get them out, and how better to do that than to just talk to you and see what you think, see what I think, see what you think in the comments. And I think I'll just dive right into it. So the Queen died, and many of you know I'm pro-Scottish independence, so I don't have any love for the British government as such, and the way things are arranged. But I wanted to, because I know that most of my audience is from the United States, so, and even people in Britain are not entirely aware of the history or the arrangement between Scotland and the rest of the UK, predominantly England. So I thought I'd just say what I know, and I think everything I know is correct, and I'm sure you can correct me if I'm wrong. So, so there are actually two unions in the UK. The United Kingdom is a kingdom, obviously, and it was originally became the United Kingdom over 100 years before the governments of England and Scotland were united into one government, the British government. So, being of my political persuasion, which is to be pro-Scottish independence, is not and is not the same as wanting rid of the monarchy. It's actually they're not mutually exclusive at all. I'm recording this video while I sit here in Canada, an independent North American country, member of the UN, G7 and all that, and King Charles III is our king too, but we're independent, so it works. And let's be honest, it's mostly a symbolic, traditional, cultural thing, in that we are independent. Australia's independent, New Zealand's independent, but Scotland isn't, and England isn't either. So it's quite an interesting arrangement, and I think that a lot of people get mistaken when you see people who are, in my case, pro-Scottish independence, that we must hate the Queen or hate the King, stuff like that. And that's just not the case at all. Although everything about the Queen, her accent and everything, certainly screamed posh Englishness. Obviously that was her upbringing, and her accent is her accent. But the affinity with Scotland and the historical union, the first union in 1603, of the Scottish and English crowns, well, it's as English as you might feel she presented. She was Scottish too. There's Scottish lineage there. So people like myself generally propose that, who are pro-Scottish independence, and this goes for Scottish National Party, and Nicola Sturgeon has echoed all of this, that can honour the monarch, appreciate the historical institution of it all, and also want to be independent. And that's where we sit. There's a few idiots out there who think that because we want to be independent, Scotland wants to be independent, those of us who support it, that we must hate the monarchy, and it's just, these people are morons. They just need to read a book, or even just look at Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and realise that it's actually, you know, it's not a fairy tale, it's actually happening in real life right now. So basically you had the union of the crowns between England and Scotland, where you had two separate kingdoms united into one, and then for over 100 years England and Scotland were independent of each other in terms of government. And then over 100 years later, in 1707, both parliaments united into one parliament. Now, that parliament went and stayed in London, so from the outside it looks as though, and I think in many ways it did, appeared to be that England and Scotland didn't join together. It was more like England absorbed Scotland into their existing parliament, which in many ways is kind of what happened, I would say, given that England is so much more populous than Scotland. In many ways it should have been like, you know, shut down both parliaments and open up a brand new one in Leeds or something, you know, like, I often think that would have been a bad idea. Like, that's something that a lot of new countries like Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the United States have done, in that they created a capital city that was often neutral from previous old established cities like Canberra, Wellington, Washington DC, Ottawa. Canberra especially is a perfect example because they decided to build it there because it was equidistant between Sydney and Melbourne, so that they wouldn't upset the people of those cities, you know, trying to keep it neutral. At least that's the Australian history that I understood when I was there. So, but getting back to the institution of it all, I've been watching it on the news the last week and I've been quite emotional, and I have to admit I really love it. The pageantry, I don't really care too much, I guess, for ball gowns and all the jewels and shit like that, but the military kind of traditions and seeing all the Royal Regiment of Scotland in kilts and marching, I love all that stuff. And there are people who would certainly want to do away with it all, and I get that, but I guess I feel, maybe because I'm a wee bit older, that it would make life a little less colourful. It would take this rich tapestry and turn it into just a kind of boring old rug, maybe. Obviously there is got to recognise that there's a historical, colonial, imperial past. A lot of bad shit went down historically, although that goes for many countries, not just Britain and British Empire. But I do think it's fair to say that despite all of that, the Queen died leaving the institution, Britain and the Commonwealth in a better place than how she found it. You know, it's important to recognise that she is, for the most part, or she was, for the most part, a symbolic head of state with no actual power, more like an embodiment of this living history, excuse me, and traditions, which just make life, society, and cultures interesting. I mean, it's interesting, right? I think it's kind of fun. I feel like if we tore it all down, would we be better off? I don't think so. Maybe if out of sheer grievance, it might give you some momentary relief. You finally got rid of the monarchy, and now we can move forward as republics. But there are republics already in the world, and are they better than Canada? Are they better than Australia or Britain? Are they more fair? Are they more multicultural? Are they more diverse? I would say no. In fact, I would say the opposite in many ways. Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, very multicultural, very diverse, very modern, and very old. And there are very many things, especially about Britain, that I don't like, and it's one of the reasons why I emigrated. So, a lot of old attitudes that just didn't work well with me. I felt like the black sheep in that culture in many ways, but maybe it's because I'm overseas, appreciating it, watching it from a distance, that I don't know, I like it. I also like that it's like a club. Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and even India, despite the tumultuous history, bloody history, even India with Britain, there's like this club. You've got the Commonwealth Games, the Commonwealth itself. Is it an instrument or a tool for oppression? Maybe it was once, but not anymore. I don't think it is. I mean, certainly I haven't seen any indication of that. So I definitely feel as though, for better or worse, Britain, the British monarchy, the old empire, which is now the Commonwealth, has become a more modern, forward-looking, very open-minded organisation. Was the Queen responsible for that? Let's just, there's a sort of mystique around that, because the monarch is supposed to be politically neutral, can't vote. Well, they actually technically can't vote, but they don't vote. They do meet with prime ministers and have chit-chats, and all of it is behind closed doors, and it never gets leaked to the media. I feel like there has to be something valuable in that, something that is worth keeping. And also, there's an interesting psychology around a constant presence of a symbol, a living symbol, who's always there. Prime ministers, governments come and go. In many countries, it's, as you know, it's a tennis match between left and right, and non-stop. And then, but to have somebody above that, like symbolically above that, who is kind of the figurehead of the nation. I mean, it's an intangible thing, and I guess you could just say I'm talking a lot of crap, and you could just get rid of it and nobody would notice, but because so many people in the United States, for example, have taken up such an interest in the Queen and the monarchy, it almost suggests to me that, and maybe I'm wrong, that it's a fascination, certainly, but also something that maybe they're missing, maybe the United States is missing, in that you have presidents who come and go, good and bad, and then you have institutions that have the picture of the president up on the wall, this elected person. It's almost a temporary leader. The leader's always temporary, whereas a monarchy is kind of a constant. And again, it's intangible, and maybe it's just psychological. And there's an interesting psychology that people appreciate the constant presence of a symbol. I'm not sure why. Maybe in the end we're all just children looking for a mother or father to help guide us, you know, and I don't know, getting quite philosophical about it, but I like it, and I certainly wouldn't want to get rid of it unless they were doing actual harm. Now, don't get me wrong, there's certain royal figures who are undoubtedly less than reputable, let's say. And maybe there should be a process for eliminating them. But as far as the Queen goes, I definitely admired her and find that you've got this person who was born into this role, this unique role, who, I mean, obviously she lived a life of riches, but she wasn't sitting around just watching Netflix or driving Lamborghinis or doing all the sorts of things we would do if we had that sort of money. We didn't have to have a job. But she didn't do that. She somehow did perform as a constant symbol of what? Unity. Constant symbol of living history. One thing that I always like, and that I actually, when I was a reservist in Royal Navy, I can't actually recall if we swore allegiance to the Queen or not. I think we did. It may have been a brief little thing, but it was so long ago. But I did swear allegiance to the Queen when I became a New Zealand citizen. And the Armed Forces of Canada, UK, Australia, New Zealand, they all swear allegiance to the monarch, not to their respective governments and not to their respective prime ministers. And I always found that an interesting arrangement because it almost introduces an ambiguity, a checks and balances ambiguity, that if one of our countries did happen to come along with a tyrannical prime minister who tried to overthrow the democracy, maybe they would have some pause knowing that their military is not their military, it's actually the monarch's military. They can use it if they use it properly, in agreement with Parliament and all that. And obviously it would be an extreme example, and it's never happened. But maybe that's why it's never happened. Maybe that's why these countries I've named are so stable. Because it is a division, almost an ambiguous division, that it's possible, quietly, behind closed doors, that the Queen or the King could have a little chat in the ear of someone, maybe a Prime Minister, or someone who they thought were up to no good, and just said, listen, be careful, because I could make life difficult for you. I don't know if that's ever been said. Maybe it's never been said. Or maybe it's been said a lot, and we just never knew about it. I know that, for those of you who don't know, in countries like Canada, Australia, New Zealand, we don't have the Queen or the King, because the King cannot physically be present in all these places. So we have a Governor General who acts on behalf of the monarch. And I don't know enough about it, but I do know that the Governor General in Australia did at one time jump in and interfere, whether rightly or wrongly, it's not for me to say, in the Parliament. I don't know the ins and outs of it. I know it didn't go down well though, and after that the Monarchy opinion rating in Australia took a bit of a dip. But it's interesting that that exists. And maybe for extreme examples. It could happen. But here's the thing. Recently was it Barbados, I believe, just dumped monarchy. They were like, right, we're a republic now. And there was no grumpiness. Prince of Wales, Prince Charles, who's now the king, went there and was like, hey, you know, it was nice being part of the monarchy, but now you're off on your own, and good luck to you, and it's like, sorry for the past, and see you later. So I think there is a interesting thing going on with how it all works, you know. It's more of a voluntary club. There's no more, it's not like there's we're the British Empire and you better do what you're told, all that stuff. It's actually a nice big club, and whether Scotland becomes independent or not, I like being part of this club. Maybe one day Scotland will be a republic, and if the people vote for that, then that's great. I'll totally support that too. One thing I feel like getting older is you can just live in both worlds. You don't always have to choose Team A or Team B. Bit of both is fine. There are issues in the world where you have to take a stand, and I'll end this video by saying that the only main issue that's going on in the world right now, which to me is very black and white, and there is a right and a wrong. There is a Team A and a Team B. That's Ukraine and Russia, and I fully support Ukraine in reclaiming their invaded country. There's no more ins and outs than that. I know people will talk about conspiracies and stuff, but nope. They were invaded. They gotta kick them out. And that's it. So I look forward to seeing how the new king performs. Maybe he'll just live the rest of his life opening up libraries and schools and railways and stuff like that. Or maybe he'll sneak some of his well-known environmental views down into governments and leaders and have a little bit of influence behind closed doors that mere commoners like you and I will never find out about.